So, as promised, I told you guys I'll update you on my progress while reading Things Fall Apart. So, as I said before, the book is about 250 pages. It's quite a slim volume, and this is how far I have gone with the book. I'm actually on page 38, and boy, oh boy, it feels so nostalgic. It has taken me back to my childhood. So, as I read, I found out that some the movie concentrated on some parts, and some parts they sort of brushed over. Like in the movie, they made it quite a big deal about the wrestling match that Okonkwo partook in that made him the champion of the village, and then won him the love of Ekwefi, who later became his second wife. But in this book, it was not such a big deal. They only told us how Okonkwo came to be respected and how his childhood basically was. So as the book opens, we see it begins, of course, with Okonkwo, who is the village champion. At the age of 18, we get to learn that he took part in a wrestling match, and he defeated an opponent that was called Omalinze the Cat. And because he was called the Cat, because his back never touched the floor, because in the wrestling match, if your opponent pins you to the ground, your back will touch the floor. So basically, the part that I have read sets the tone, as in the world of this Okonkwo, or Igbo land, as it is normally called, what was happening before the white man came, before the colonialists came. And I think he really went to great length to do this, because writings of that time always portray Africans as savages. They were not doing anything with their lives. They were basically jumping up and down like animals, scavenging for food. But reading this book, you get to see a vibrant culture. They had a vibrant culture. He describes the landscape, the culture of the people, the way their society was organized, and their traditions, the things they believed in. And it was indeed a very organized society. So, also, the first part of this book, as we read on, is actually set in Omofia. That is the name of Okonkwo's community, as it were, consisting of 9 villages, if I'm not mistaken. So, the the Omofia is a very, very feared and respected community, because they were indeed powerful. After all, the wrestling champion now comes from there, and also it was believed that they had superior magical powers. It was believed that they had superior magical powers. And then Chinua Achebe also explores the gods that they worshipped, the deities, and the things that they believed in, and how these deities or these gods shaped their life and made sure that their society was well ordered. Then, in this part of the book that I've read, we've also gotten to meet Unoka. Unoka was Okonkwo's father. Even though Okonkwo was he's a very successful man, his success was in fact described, and it was measured by the number of yams he had in his barn, number one, and the number of wives he had. He had 3 wives, and his yam barn was well stocked. And from a very tender age, he had to start fending for his family. And by this, I mean his immediate family, his mother, and his sisters, because his father was, as described in this book, number one, he had a lot of bad luck, and secondly, he was very lazy. He was a drunkard, he loved to drink. But he also loved to play the flute. He was gifted in that. But that is not a profession that can pay you well enough to feed your family. So from a young age, Okonkwo had to start fending for his immediate family. And then he feared one thing more than anything else in this life, becoming like his father, as was the norm, or as is the case in human relationships. Jibes will be thrown, and jibes were always thrown at him because of his father, Onoka. And then from this part of the book, we get to know that Unoka, his father, died a very shameful death. The disease that affected him was described as the swelling. Right now, I cannot call to mind maybe the scientific name for that disease, but back then, we did not have any cure. So when he swelled up, he was busy, and anyone that swells up like that, then in Umofia village, was taken into the evil forest and left there to die. They were not attended to because it was believed that the death of the person is an abomination, and the land or the earth called Allah, as they call it then, will not accept such corruption. So the person was basically left with that disease to die in the evil forest, and that was how Okonkwo's father died. So Okonkwo, from a young age, made up his mind that he was never going to be like his father. He is going to make it by all means. So as the book opens, he's well on his way. He's accomplished. He has titles. He has a barn full of yams. He has 3 wives and several children. So it can be said that in his time he had what made it. So as the story goes on, we get to a part where the the next village, or the village that is next to them, where they to Omofia village, where they usually go and trade, sort of had they committed a crime against Omofia village. I think the name of the village is Mbaino, or something like that. A daughter of the village, a woman actually, she went to Mbaino to trade or to sell her wares, and then she was killed, and then the news was brought back home. So an emergency meeting was summoned, and then Okonkwo was asked to go to that village to go and tell them that if they do not atone for what they have done, then they are going to, a war will be declared. And as I said before, Umuofia was well feared because they were good fighters, and they also had superior magic, as they said. So when they went to the village of Mbaino, so the villagers actually agreed that it was a wrong thing that a son of their village did, and then to compensate for the death of a daughter of Umuofia, a virgin, Umuofia actually asked for a virgin girl, and then a soul that would be sacrificed, as it were, to the village of Umuofia. So 2 people were given over to them, a young virgin and a young boy. This is where we get to meet Ikem Efuna, who will later play a very, very important role in the household of Okonkwo. And as the story progresses, at least as I remember the movie, he was taken as a young boy, given to Okonkwo together with the young virgin, and then he took it back to Umofia to atone for the daughter of Umofia that was killed by this next village. So Ikemefuna has now come to live in Okonkwo's household. He's now growing up, and all the children and even Okonkwo himself have become quite fond of him. So, guys, this is day 2 of reading Things Fall Apart by Chinua Achebe. And this is how far I have gone, guys. Can you see? I have read the bigger parts. It's remaining only this smaller part for me to finish up. And what does that tell you about the book? It is a very, 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 very interesting read. It has been very, very nostalgic for me. If you had seen my thrift shopping video, you will know how excited I was to have a copy of this book. And I want to say this: the movie adaptation only focused on just a tiny bit of the story. And it was quite a long movie. I don't know if it was because they were using old technology, but then it focused mainly on the parts that had to do with sorry about that. That had to do with how Okonkwo became a hero of his people, and then also the part of how he was exiled. At least that is what I can remember. But there are a lot of stories, a lot of plots that are contained here. It is quite a slim volume, as you can see, but quite a lot is packed into this slim volume. And this is definitely a reread for me. Definitely, I'm going to reread this book. I love the book. I love the pacing. Chinua Achebe, although even before reading this, I know he was a writer what he sought, and he did not disappoint in Things Fall Apart, which I think, by the way, was his first movie. So yesterday I described what I had read. So as we read on, we get to know that we remember Ezin, who is Okonkwo's favorite daughter. He was always wishing that she was a boy because his first son, Woye, in his opinion, was too fragile, too girlish. He was not manly at all. So Okonkwo did not really, will I say, did not really like him or did not approve that he was not a manly man, as they say. So is in the whom Okonkwo was wishing that she was male. So she was what we basically, what they called back then, even when we were young, they used to call it Obanje, meaning that a child, at least in the tradition back then, you give birth to, and then the child dies while the child is still a toddler, and then the mother gets pregnant again. These children keep dying. Back then, they were called Obanje. Some people argue that because science was not available to teach them, that maybe it was because of sickle cell anemia or some other hereditary diseases from the family that were making the children or the infants to die. But back then, it was believed. Wow. So Okonkwo, as we read on, is wishing that Ezinne, his daughter, his favorite daughter, was a male because he sees her as very strong and very wise for her age. So we read on and we get to know that Ezinne is an Obanje as they were known back then. So basically, Obanje describes maybe an infant that dies in as a toddler, maybe in the first 2 years of life, and then if the mother of the child gives birth to another child, that child also dies. They believe that it was that one that died in the first one that came back, and the child is sort of tormenting the woman or the family in this way. They will go through the stress of carrying pregnancy, giving birth, and only for the child to die in the first 2 or 3 years. So this actually happened to Okonkwo's second wife, Ekwefi, that's the mother of Ezinne. It happened to her 11 times. She lost 10 children this way, and then the 11th one, which is Ezinne, is the one that now survived. Okay, and then it is the only child. Ezinne is the only child that she has right now. So Ezinne is now, she was described as having a fever, and her mother was very, very worried because it is that sort of fever that has come and claimed her other 10 babies. So she is now well, and then a medicine man, or a dibia as it is known, that specializes in curing these Obanje children, has now been called, and then the process involves basically the child involved telling the medicine man where she has buried her, I sort of say charm or something, which enables the child to always return to the land of the dead at whenever it wishes. So if they believe that if this charm is dug up, it has a name actually. If it is dug up on them, the child will not be able to return. The child will go on living. So they set about to find this charm, and they found it. And it's reported that after that, Ezinne no longer falls sick frequently. So next, Then Ezinne, we also get to know that Ezinne was actually chosen. She has supernatural abilities or connection. So one night, as they were having dinner and getting ready for bed, the priestess of Agbala, who is in a cave, mostly at night, prophesying, now comes to Okonkwo's house and says, give me my daughter, give me my daughter. Agbala wants my daughter. So the whole family is thrown into sadness and confusion. But then the priestess goes into Ekwefi's hut. So we also get to know that Ezinne has supernatural powers, and she has in fact been chosen by the god of the village, the Agbala, who has a priestess. So one night the priestess comes into their compound unannounced and said she wants to take Ezinne, that the Agbala wants to see the girl basically, and her parents are not allowed to come. And then the child was actually sleeping. Okonkwo told the priestess she's sleeping. The priestess actually went into the mother's room or her hut and carried the child, put the child on her back. The child was crying. The parents were hopelessly helpless, and she carried the child. And all these things was happening in the night. She carried the child on her back and entered into the forest, basically. So her mother, being the mother of the child, could not hold herself. She started following them in the dark. She could not see anything, but the priestess was singing as she was going and making chants and all that. So she was just following her voice, following her deep into the forest. And they walked on and on and on. So it ended up being that she walked the whole 9 villages that make up the clan or whatever before she now returned back to the shrine of the god. So the mother was basically following at a distance. So when she now came and entered into her shrine, of course, women were not allowed to enter into the shrine, so she stayed outside. Meanwhile, as she was following the princess, Okonkwo, the father, was following her. So in the end, both of them ended up waiting outside until the priestess emerged with their daughter. Wow. Reading this scene, it was quite tense. It kept me at the edge of my seat. Imagine going into the dark forest in the midnight in search of your child. Imagine what it will feel like. So next up, life goes on. Obierika, who we all know is Okonkwo's greatest and best friend, we get to see a traditional wedding of his daughter. So Chinua Achebe uses this opportunity to paint the beautiful picture of what traditional marriage is like in this culture, in Igbo culture. It is actually not because I am from there, but it's actually a thing of beauty. Even up till now, some people from other tribes, other countries still come to attend and to watch, to see the rites and the things that are done. It's actually a thing of beauty. So he goes into great detail to paint this picture. First of all, he starts with the payment of the bride price. Before the suitors come, he invites his close, his brothers that are still alive. They have to be present, which is how it is done even till today. They will be present. Then the suitors will come to ask for the hand of the girl in marriage, and then they'll be given a date and given what to bring. So we read on the day that they are coming to pay the bride price. Even in my own place, it is still done. The bride price, they do not bid for it in monetary terms, like you say, okay, 5,000 naira or 10,000 naira. No, they use sticks. They use sticks. So maybe each stick will represent a bag of cowries back then, or maybe in our own time it represents, let's say, 10,000 naira, something that's already been agreed. So the suitors basically, the people, the father of the girl, the family of the girl, maybe they'll count out 30 sticks, give to the suitors, meaning 30 bags of cowries, right? So the suitors will now, they won't talk, they won't haggle as if they were in the market, but they will, like, if they want to pay 20 bags of cowries, they'll remove 10 sticks from the sticks that were given to them, which was 30 at the beginning, and they'll now return 20. Then the girls people will now be like, "Ah, my daughter is not cheap," and all that. It will just be all those things. These things took time. Meanwhile, while all this is going on, the women are busy in the kitchen or wherever preparing different kinds of delicacies that hopefully will be eaten and enjoyed that day. And the young men of the family are busy organizing the palm wine and all that. So, so the family of the girl will now be okay. We're not selling our daughter, blah blah blah, and all that. They will now add 5 more sticks to the 20 that were returned and give it back to the in-laws. The suitors will now count it and say, okay, 25. Okay, and they will say, okay, maybe from the 25, they will now remove 2 sticks. So this is how it will go on and on and on, and then they will now agree at a price, at a final. Maybe they will agree at 15 sticks, which is 15 bags of calories. That is what the suitors will pay. And then once it is announced, everybody will rejoice. They will come out and eat together because they are now what? A family. They will rejoice, they will dance. The women will now be allowed to bring in the food. The girl and her mother and her friends will now come and greet the people and all that. So it was really, he really painted that picture, and I'm very, very happy about it. It was very, very captivating. And I learned that this book was translated into 50 languages. I wonder how all these things with the local names that he used were translated. I hope nothing was lost in translation. So after the wedding of Obiorika's daughter, life goes on. Then one day the Udu, or the instrument that they used to send out announcements, you're actually trained to recognize the sound. There is a way to be sounded. You know somebody has died, and there's a way to be sounded. It's calling for a meeting and all that. So the way it was sounding this night, an old man had died, and the sound even came down to the fact that it could sound out the name of the particular village down to the family, the large family, and then to the nuclear family of the person that has died. From the sound of a drum alone, they could tell who had died. So it was announced, and that person was from the clan of Okonkwo. So the whole village was thrown into mourning. And then during his burial, he was an old man, and he had 3 titles, so he was a very big man indeed. And for such burials, the masquerades, or what they call the spirits of the dead of their ancestors, were usually came out in full force to honor the said person. And so they came out in full force. I don't know if I told you people a very important plot twist. Remember Ikemefuna, the boy that was offered as a sacrifice from the other village that was living with Okonkwo in his household, that his son and his children had actually grown fond of. So a decree actually came from their oracle that that boy Ikemefuna was to be killed. So the message was given to Okonkwo. It was prepared. They took the boy to the forest actually to go and kill him. So meanwhile, before then, a warning was given to Okonkwo by an elder. This man that has actually died, that I was telling you about his burial, came and warned Okonkwo that he should not have a hand in the killing of that boy. So some men were chosen to take the boy into the bush to go and off him. So Okonkwo, it was not compulsory for him to go, but he chose to go because, as we know, Okonkwo, will I say, he had daddy issues, as they will say nowadays. He was always out to prove a point that he was a strong man and nothing like his father. So, nothing like his father, Onoka. So I actually went with them. So when they now got to the point, they actually lied to the boy that they were taking him home. When they now got into the bush, the people that were trying to kill him, they struck him with a machete. He tried to running towards Okonkwo, his father, for protection and all that. And Okonkwo caught. He was actually calling him, "Father, help me," or something like that. And Okonkwo caught him down. So he actually, when they finished, they went home. And it was a very traumatic experience for Okonkwo. He could not eat for days. His family was in mourning, was thrown into mourning. The children, there was confusion everywhere. So it was after this that Obiorika's daughter now ended up getting married, and the ceremonies and all that helped to remove Okonkwo's mind from what had happened. But that warning of that man still resonated with him. So As I was describing the man's burial, which was another opportunity for Chinua Achebe to paint a very vivid picture of the culture, the rich culture of these people, the Igbo people. He first of all did it with the marriage ceremony or the giving in marriage ceremony, and then he's now doing it with the burial ceremony. So these people were not and are not savages. They had a rich culture that was really, really thriving before the white man came. So it was during this burial that Okonkwo mistakenly killed his kinsman. According to the story, his gun went off and shot a young boy who was his kinsman in the heart. And there in the village, in the clan, it was an abomination for you to kill your kinsman. If you kill your kinsman, you will go on exile. If you did it purposely, you go on exile and may never return, or you stay a very long time. But since it is not on purpose, you will be given a number of years that you will stay. So because of that, Okonkwo has to go on exile. So at short notice, he had to gather his children, gather his whatever property people could carry on their heads, and left the village and went to Mbanta, which is where his mother is from. And it reminded me in our tribe or in Igbo tradition, they always say Osochua Madogaikuneya. So in our tradition, in Igbo tradition, your mother's place, your mother's house, wherever your mother is from, is always seen as a place of comfort and refuge for you. A place that you can always run back to. And that is exactly what happened to Okonkwo. He went back to his mother's village. Being a proud man that he is, he was not happy about it, but he had no choice. They received him well, gave him land to build, to raise his family, to farm, and to grow yams. So he was not suffering by any means, but then he had his, when I say political ambition, so he was not very, very happy. So it was during the period of Okonkwo's 7 years exile that the colonialists, or they were calling what they were calling the white man, invaded or came into Igbo land, as it were. So first of all, they came into one of the 9 villages of Omofia with his bicycle, which the villagers were calling a metal horse. So the man came, and as the story goes, they could not communicate. He came alone. They did not understand him, and so the people of that village killed him and tied his metal horse, as they called it, to a tree so that to not go back and report the murder that was committed. So when they killed the white man and all that, buried him and everything, so they thought that was the end of it. So the white man was not alone, so his colleagues later came, investigated, found out what happened, saw the bicycle, then went to gather the army, came on a market day and invaded the village, killed the whole village, and a few people ran for their lives and came to Mafia to report what had happened. So Obi Erika has now gone to where Okonkwo is in exile to tell him all this sad news, and that makes Okonkwo even less happy. So time is going on, and then his friend goes back. So things fall apart, is done and dusted. So it took me approximately 2 days to read, and boy oh boy, was it worth my time. So I've been telling you people all that I have been reading about in this classic novel by Chinua Achebe, and I will say this for the book: the world building is top notch. The character development, I was very impressed with. We saw how the main character, who is Okonkwo, basically started as a sort of proud hero and all that, and how in the end he was indeed a very broken man. So I'll just go ahead and tell you guys all the things that happened right to the end. So the missionaries have come to the clans or to the villages and to Umuofia specifically. And meanwhile, Okonkwo has come back from his exile, right? So the missionaries now, the village people were thinking it was a joke. They will not last. Just ignore them and they will go away. But history has told us, in retrospect, they did not go away. So the missionaries now requested for a piece of land to build their church because now they had a lot of members, right? So the villagers thought they could play a fast one on them and said, okay, they should go into the evil forest, which where they threw away twins, those that died of the disease of swelling, and then where they disposed of their fetishes and their gods that they no longer had use of. So they disposed of them in the evil forest. So they believed that the evil forest was heavily haunted and all that. So they said, go to the evil forest, take as much land as you want. And behind them, they were laughing, hoping that in 4 days, after they clear the evil forest and build their church, that they will all die. But lo and behold, the missionaries cleared the and their new converts, they cleared the land and built a church. Everybody was hoping and looking and waiting, but nothing happened to them. And because of that, they they won more converts after surviving tampering with the evil forest. Okay, as I said before, Konko's exile is over by now. So before he leaves his mother's people, he throws a feast and everybody rejoices with him, and then he comes back to his fatherland. And then in describing the food that they were cooking during the as you know, cassava starch is a very popular among the people of the place where the book is set. So I was wondering why he was calling the cassava starch fufu in the novel, because it has a name. It has a name and I know the name. So why was he calling it fufu? I don't know. So Okonkwo has come back, and then Umofia has changed beyond his recognition. And worst of all, at least from Okonkwo's perspective, one of the newest converts is a man, a titled man. Because when the missionaries came newly, it was only outcasts that were being converted. But now a titled man that actually has three titles has now converted. And the elders of the village are not happy about it. So the life goes on, and then the Okonkwo has come back, and then his friend Obierika is telling him all the things that have happened since the missionaries came. And reading their conversation, it does make one sad. Let me read an excerpt from there. I think it's in page 140. Okay. Yes, sir. It says, they were talking and he said, we will be cowards to compare ourselves with the men of Abame who, you know, of Abame are those that were sacked by the soldiers. So as Okonkwo and his friend Obiorika are conversing, it says, it's already too late, says Obiorika sadly. Our own men and our sons have joined the ranks of the stranger. They have joined his religion and they help to uphold his government. If we should try to drive out the white men in Umofia, we should find it easy. There are only two of them, but what of our own people who are following their way and have been given power? They will go to Umoru and bring the soldiers, and we will be like Abame. He paused for a long time and then said, I told you on my last visit to Mbanta how they hanged Aneto. So there was basically a man of Mbame Aneto that was hanged because he broke the white man's law, not the law of the village. So this is basically a scene where Kongo and his friend Erika are lamenting the good old days and how things have changed and how things have fallen apart. He even made reference to it. He said, we were amused at his foolishness and allowed him to stay. Now he has won our brothers, and our clan can no longer act like one. He has put a knife on the things that held us together, and we have fallen apart. So it was a very, very sad conversation that they were having, and things were indeed falling apart. So as we said before, things have changed drastically, and then because some of the people, that's their same brothers, noticed how much power the missionaries or the government that came with the missionaries had, and they decided to take advantage of it, and they were using it to maltreat the people to the extent that during one of their spirit festivals, where masquerades usually come out, one of the converts unmasked one of the masquerades, and then it is an abomination. It is something that has never happened and can never happen, to the extent that there was no punishment against it because it was something unimaginable. So, because of that, the people were angry, and the spirits, that's the masquerade group, who are a group of young, hot blooded men, came together and raised the village church. So, what really gave their converted brothers the audacity and the courage to start engaging in all these attacks against the village was basically because Mr. Brown, who was the head of the church before, had been replaced because he became sick. So someone else replaced him, and this person that replaced him was not a diplomatic man at all. He even encouraged the converts to go after their unconverted brothers. So that was what really encouraged it, and tensions were really high. But as I said before, the village church has been raised. Then the new head of the church now sent for security from the headquarters. I think it was in a place called Umoru. So soldiers were sent. And then he now devised a trick so that he could arrest the four or six most senior men of the clan. He invited them for a meeting and was talking to them under the pretext of negotiating with them for peace to reign. Then they were cornered, arrested, handcuffed, and taken to the prison, where they were seriously and annoyingly maltreated by people that they would regard as mere men under their tradition. So they were seriously mistreated, they were flogged, and they were injured. So, and guess what? Okonkwo was among these six that were arrested. And as you know him, he's somebody that cannot control his anger. So he was very angry. And they were under incarceration for some days. And then the whole village was forced to raise a ransom of 250 bags of cowries. The fine was actually 200 bags of cowries. But their fellow brothers who were serving the white man added 50 cowries for their own personal gain. So because they saw the authority of the white man, so they took advantage of it and were seriously oppressing their own brothers. So when they were released from jail, they came back and a meeting was held. They decided that they were going to revenge what was done to their elders. So it was during this meeting, the head of the church, now head of it, and then he actually sent soldiers or law enforcement officers, black skinned, not white this time, to go and put a stop to that meeting. And it was during this meeting that the worst happened. Okonkwo, in his anger, he was full of hatred for these people that have come and basically shattered whatever it was that he believed in, and then he killed one of them. And when he did this, he knew there will be repercussions and there will be consequences. He went behind his home in the bush and offed himself by hanging. So that was how the book basically drew to a close. I'm sure I've given you guys a lot of spoilers, but I couldn't help it. But then, if you pick up this book to read, I'm sure it will still be a very enjoyable read to you. As I said before, it was very well written. The world building was expert because Chinua Achebe basically took us into this world of that was existing before the missionaries or the white guys came. When they had tried to paint the picture that these people were basically living in the bush and were savages and did not have any order to their lives. So, Things Fall Apart by Chinua Achebe, I will give 4 star. I'm biased, I know, but I cannot help it. I will give the book a 4 star. It was a very educative, entertaining read. And I cannot stop singing the praises of this book. And I'm very happy. I'm very happy that I'm now a proud owner of a copy of this African writer's classic. So, what do you think? Are you going to pick up the book? Are you going to read it? If you do, please chat me up in the comments. I would love to hear from you. So, this is where we'll put an end to this. See you in the next one. Bye.